What's up, guys? Day 6 of the 100 Days of LeetCode. Today we got a good one for you. It's number 200, number of islands. This one uses breadth first search. So yeah, we'll get into that. Let's get right to it. Let's start reading it. So given an n by n 2D binary grid, which represents a map of ones and zeros, and that represents land and water, return the number of islands. An island is surrounded by water and is formed by connecting adjacent lands horizontally or vertically. You may assume all four edges of the grid are all surrounded by water. So here's this grid. So you got what? You got one island, actually one island, and that's it, right? Because this is all these ones make one island. And it's another grid, so you have what? One island there, one island there, one island there. So you should have three. Okay. And that basically just goes into a few constraints, nothing too crazy there. M and N are going to be greater than or equal to 1, and they're going to be less than or equal to 300. And we're only going to be dealing with zeros and ones. All right, so, and this is actually just a remnant of the solution that I had that I did before that. So I'll reset the default here. Reset to default. The function's called numIslands, and we are going to be using a helper function today. And we can just call that breadth first search. We can just say it takes self grid, which is a list of lists of strings, and it's also going to take two positions, which together we're going to be able to tell which index of the where exactly in the matrix we are. So in the number of islands, the main function here, we're just going to initialize a count variable to 0, and this is what's going to be keeping track of the number of islands that we have. And we're going to say for I in range len grid. So this, if you don't know Python, basically this is just a for loop, and it's basically just saying we're going to start at 0 and we're going to go all the way up to, but not including the length of the grid. Yeah, and then here we can just say for j in range len grid I, and if we're in here, we're going to increment the count, and we're going to call this breadth first search function that we have at the top with grid as our argument, and then also j and I, and then count, and then we're going to return count here at the end. Now, oh, one thing I forgot. We're only going to call this, of course, if the value at that particular index is a string value of 1, right? So basically, when we're iterating through, if we see a string value of 1, we know that we've hit an island. But the tricky part is about that. What we need to do in this breadth first search function is we need to ensure that just because we hit a 1 here, we're only going to get a count. It's only going to increment by 1, even though we're going to be hitting a bunch of other ones here, right? Because this is all part of the same island. So the way we solve that is basically we hit a 1 and we say, okay, now we're going to just convert this to something else. We can just convert it to a 0. And once we convert it to a 0, we'll know not to increment the count the next time we land on that same part of the matrix. So we go here, we find that, we increment our count, change that to 0. Now we call breadth first search, which basically means you're going to search the one to the top, to the left, to the right, to the bottom. And to the top and the left, they don't exist, so we're going to check for that in our function. But here, we're going to change these to 0, and then we're going to call breadth first search on these. And we're going to keep calling breadth first search recursively until all of these hit either zeros or are outside of the grid. So what that looks like here is we can say if grid, oops, and we need we need brackets, not parentheses. If grid ij equals 0, you can just return. Now, after that, we're going to make sure that we set that particular one to 0, right? So now we know that if we land on it again, like I said before, we're not going to be incrementing the count. So now we have to call breadth first search again on each of the 4 different possibilities, but only if that is a valid possibility. So we can say if j minus 1 is greater than or equal to 0, we're going to call self.bfs grid j minus 1 I. So we're only going to call that if it's still a valid index, right? Because if it goes to -1, that's not a valid index anymore. We can't call it. Then we're going to say if I minus 1 greater than equal to 0, we're going to call same thing, self, breadth first search, grid, j, and then I minus 1. Now we need to do the other option. So we need to go on the other axis. So the way we do that is we do if j plus 1 less than the length of the grid, and we can just grab any index here. We'll do 0 because that's guaranteed to exist if we're in here. We will now call breadth first search, excuse me, grid j plus 1 and I. And likewise, if I plus 1 less than length grid, we are going to call self.bfs grid j I plus 1. Now you can do this a little bit differently. You can just put all these if statements in sort of a guard statement at the top and just call all these functions every single time regardless. But I just wanted to show it like that for you guys, so you understand that there are some situations in which this function isn't needed. So now we should run this code, and barring any errors, it should work. That's why that doesn't work. And that's why that doesn't work. Cool. There's our solution. All right, guys, so we got 94 days left of the 100 days of LeetCode. Today was day 6. If you enjoyed that, you want to see some more LeetCode problems every day, excluding Sunday, like, subscribe, and peace.